All right, it being 6 p.m., ready to start this meeting. Regular meeting of Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and Channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments will be accepted from the public
Regular meeting
at the
of
city
Finance
clerk's
Organization and
office
Personnel
until Tuesday
Committee.
at 1
This meeting is
p.m.
being
Our
broadcast
minute
live on
taker
the City
participates
of Keene
remotely, so
YouTube channel
she
and
needs
Channel
to make sure
1302.
that she hears everybody.
The video
You'll
is
be asked
also
to
streamed
turn
on
your
the city's
microphone on
website and is posted on the
if she's
website
not
by the end
hearing
of the next
any one
business
of us.
day, barring
And,
any technical difficulties.
they
Copies
have
of the
to speak a
printed
little bit
agenda
louder.
are available in the wall
They'll turn it
pockets
up
just
if
as
it's
you
not
enter the
loud
meeting
enough.
room. The public
We do have a
and other
quorum.
city
With
councilors
that,
will
we
be
have
recognized to
a
ask questions
agenda
and
with
make
5
comments on
items.
the
The
agenda
first one
item under
is a
discussion.
grant
After being recognized, all
to the
remarks
police
will be made
department.
through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones
Captain Steve Tenney from the police department.
and identify
We're here
themselves by
tonight
name and
with,
address prior to
6 p.m.
speaking.
This is a
Ready to start
reoccurring
this meeting,
annual
accepted
grant
the public.
from,
Regular meeting of Finance Organization and Personnel Committee.
it's the 2024 Law Enforcement Substance Abuse Reduction Initiative
And
Grant.
Channel 1302.
This is one that's gone back
Video
as
is
far
also
as at least
streamed on the city's
2017,
website and is posted on the website by the end
with
of the
varied
next
amounts
business day,
each year.
barring any technical difficulties.
This grant's for
Copies of the printed agenda are
overtime
available in the
reimbursement
wall pockets
for
as you enter the
use of
meeting
our officers in
room. Public
detective
and
and
other city
drug
councilors will be
investigation.
recognized to ask questions and make comments
This
on
year's
the
award
agenda
was in
item
the
under
amount
discussion.
of
Grant.
After being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair.
$2,189.
I will not recognize an
I have some
individual
historic
a
values if you need them,
second
but
time
that'll be
until
the award
everyone
for this year.
who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones
Captain Steve Tenney from the police department.
and identify
We're here
themselves by
tonight
name
with,
and address prior to speaking.
This is a
Ready to start this
reoccurring
meeting,
annual
accept
grant
the
from
regular meeting of Finance Organization and Personnel Committee.
the 2024 Law Enforcement Substance Abuse Reduction Initiative.
And Channel 1302. Video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the
Varied
next
amounts.
business day, barring any technical
This grant's for
copies of the printed agenda
overtime reimbursement
pockets
for
as you enter the
use of our officers in
public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make
this
comments
year's
on the
award
agenda
was in the
item
amount
under
of
discussion. Grant after being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair.
$2,189.
I will not recognize an
I have some
individual
historic
a second time
that'll be the award for this year.
who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones
Captain Steve Tenney from the police department.
and identify themselves by name and address.
Can you hear me now?
6 p.m.
All right, how's it going? Good evening. My name's Jared Goodell. I sent a letter a few weeks ago to the counselors, it was referred here at the council meeting last week, about placing assembly permits, which are, as I understand it, issued in accordance with state law on any occupancy that's over 49 persons. Specifically, my concern was I received a bill from the Keene Fire Department in the amount of $70 for a business that I recently opened that required an assembly permit. The bill was for $70, as I mentioned. After having been familiarized with state statute that applies to assembly permits, I remembered that the statute says that those permits can be issued without charge for 1 year. So I inquired with the finance department about that. It was referred to the fire chief, who responded back, and I included this email with my letter, that the fee was for the inspection, not the permit. The chief cited the ordinances, Appendix B specifically, which describes, as he wrote, the $70 inspection fee under the life safety permit fees section. I don't know if you folks have had a chance to look at Appendix B and specifically the page that, or the section that talks about life safety permit fees
And I just want to mention that that the heading of the section is life safety permit fees, not inspection fees. And the line that I was charged for, my business was charged for, says place of assembly permits, valid for 1 year, $70. And so it's clear to me, and the invoice that I received says place of assembly permit, that my business was charged $70 for a place of assembly permit, which is against state law, specifically statute RSA 155:17, 155:19, I apologize. And so I'm asking for this committee to make a recommendation to the full council that city staff immediately stop the practice of billing Keene businesses and churches and restaurants and community gathering places, any place that requires or that the city has required to get an assembly permit, that practice of billing for those cease immediately, and then to repeal that code that charges that $70. I think that code's been there for quite some time. I don't think it's under, this is no fault of anybody. I put that in my letter. I don't think that there should be any fee for an inspection for a place of assembly permit. I think that would be contrary to the intent of state law, which says that they shall be at no charge. And then I think that people or businesses that have been charged for an assembly permit in the last 2 years should be refunded that fee. I mean, these are places like churches, these are restaurants, community gathering places that are being charged this, and they just shouldn't be, quite frankly. So that's my request of this committee and the council. I just also wanted to reference, and I brought copies if you'd like, the Office of the State Fire Marshal did put out a informational bulletin back in March of 2013 titled Places of Assembly. And it's essentially a restatement of the statute 155. And then there's a frequently asked questions portion of that the Fire Marshal's Office put together. One of the FAQs is, can I charge a nominal fee to the applicant for the issuance of an assembly permit? And the Fire Marshal's response is no. The charging of a fee for the permit is expressly prohibited in RSA 155:19. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks very much. Could you leave us a copy of that fire marshal's?
Yes.
Memo?
And it's on page 3 that you're looking for. And I bring it over here. Yeah, okay.
Members of the committee? Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was able to Google quickly and find that bulletin. And I'd be curious, I understand that it was for the inspection by licensing agency piece, so I'm curious to hear the response from the city side on that. Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll hold off on my question.
Okay. So ultimately, we're going to put this on more time because we think there's a lot more research that needs to be done. We don't want to make a quick decision based on information. We're going to ask the city attorney to speak first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so we got this in from Mr. Goodell last week. The city attorney Mullins and I did take a peek at it. He had been out a couple days, so we haven't been able to give as much research as we want. We do understand what he was saying, pulled the statutes, saw the ordinance, so we want to take a good look at it. We get the concept. We also have some communications out to our counterparts in other municipalities. You know, I did do some rudimentary pulling of their codes. Some have the same phrase as we do in their codes. Some have different ones, that it's a fee for inspection. So, you know, we're trying to tease that out and understand it, and then when we come back for more time, we'll have a more thorough explanation for you.
I have no comments unless there's any questions.
I'd ask to move to recommend this item be placed on more time.
Second.
Okay, so essentially what we're going to do is do the research to be able to respond to your letter and then secondly, to address any issues we may have and come up with a permanent solution for it. So it'll be a couple weeks before we get back to you, but you'll be the first one to get a letter from us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All those in favor? No one opposed? Unanimous. Thanks. Next item is from Public Works. You sent Cord out and he got lost.
I don't know what happened to him.
You let me in?
Yeah.
He's locked on the other side of the door.
Good evening, Duncan Watson, Assistant Public Works Director. Here tonight in front of you about 2 years ago, when we were doing the CIP process, we introduced a project that was to conduct a fleet facility assessment. This was basically a capital project that was trying to determine whether our fleet facility is appropriate for what will be coming in the future, which is what we need to assess. We all know that, you know, the technologies of vehicles and equipment are changing, and our crew is very capable of servicing the fleet that we have now, but we need to bring in an expert that helps us to develop a capital program to develop the infrastructure necessary to service the fleet of the future. And this project is about that. We issued an RFQ and we received 5 responses, which is a great thing when we get plenty of responses. And we selected 2 to interview. And our committee, comprised of Jim Mountford, the fleet services manager, Christian Tarr, the utilities operations manager, and myself, interviewed 2 firms and selected the RTA Fleet Consulting Group as the unanimous choice of our group to bring forward to recommend that we contract with them to complete the facility fleet assessment.
Any questions? Comments? It's too small, I'll tell you right now. It's too
You know,
small.
Jim will say that too.
Other city councilors here, any comments? Large public area, anybody comment? Motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a professional services agreement with RTA Fleet Consulting Group for technical services for a fleet facility assessment for an amount not to exceed $49,300.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion by members of the committee. Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next one is performance bonuses and class allocation. City manager.
Thank you. As the council knows, we've been struggling with recruitment in the police department for a number of years, and it's really gotten to a tipping point. And over the last, I have my mic off. We've been struggling with recruitment for a number of years, and it's really gotten to a tipping point. Over the last several months, the council made several adjustments to the Keene Police Supervisor's contract and the Keene Police Officer's contract. And this tonight is the last adjustment for the non-union members of the police department, and it will address compression and equality across the department. So ordinance 02203-14 does two things. It adjusts the performance bonuses in section 62-195. Right now, the fire chief, deputy fire chief, and police captain all are eligible for a performance bonus annually in the amount of $2,000. As the council knows, we changed both the police supervisors' performance bonuses and the officers'. The supervisor's performance bonuses increased by $2,025, and so this ordinance will adjust those bonuses by $2,000. The second thing, and that would be effective January 8th. There's 2 different effective dates on this ordinance. So January 8, 2023, and we chose that date to include all of the calendar year reviews. The second part of the ordinance would change the grade. If on the back, you'll see it'll move the police captain 1 grade and the police chief 1 grade.
That is necessary because with the changes to the police supervisor's contract, we added 2 additional steps at the end of their range. We increased their COLA from 3 to 3.5%, and we gave them an early step. And so this grade change will address the compression we now have between those non-union positions and the union positions. And so the fire chief is included in the performance bonus change, as he's currently in that same section of code, 62-195, and would have the same adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking back at the changes in this section of code over the last, 10 years. It's gone all over the place. We literally 5 years ago did the exact opposite of this. I'm curious. I wasn't here in 2017. I don't know if there's any context to why we went from 4 to 2 in 2017. I'm looking at you.
Yeah, maybe, because I came in 2017, but I think that might have happened right before I arrived. But before you answer, I would just say I agree with you. In my budget memo, I talk about our salary grades and really needing an overhaul. And making these adjustments one at a time creates all sorts of issues between departments. And it's very difficult to keep equality across the organization. And so we do need an overhaul. And what we've been doing the last several years is, because an overhaul is expensive, we have been addressing issues as they arise. And right now, this issue is prompted by the recruitment issues that we have at the police department.
Clarifying my point is, so we're going back to what the 2015 number was, basically, is what we're doing through this. I'm questioning whether going to 2015 is enough of a change, or whether knowing what's happened in the market since 2020, whether this is functionally half what it should be because of the change they made in 2017 to drop it in half.
Yeah.
And we should be going from 4 to 8 instead.
So the reason we are increasing the performance you're talking about the performance bonus?
I wouldn't recommend going
the
higher
grade?
than what we're asking.
Yeah, so the reason we went with the 2,000 again is to keep parity between what we did with the Keene police supervisors and the non-union positions. They were adjusted by $2,025. I'm all for more, if you want to give me more. But we tried to strike a balance and make sure that we looked at the salary grades and where they were ending in the different positions versus where it was beginning in these non-union management positions, to ensure that there was enough separation to prevent compression.
I would just say, I mean, he makes a good point, but I think this is a good starting point, and it's going in the right direction.
The last, as I recall, the last change where the bonus was reduced, the positions were moved in the pay grade. So it was to compensate, and it was an interim step, which is the same, I'm trying to be nice. It's the same statement that was made in 1999 when this pay plan was put together. And there have been many changes. One of the changes, I think, that's made it probably easier to deal with this evaluation of the system is many more of the city employees have become union members, so it's easier to start balancing it. But my opinion, what happens to others, those that are classified employees that are working 100 hours a week, they get lost in the system. And I have no problem with these changes either, but I wish we could get to that point where we could be able to have a pay plan that is has equity, and we don't have to worry about this bonus thing. Because I think that, for some folks, they don't really like that. So when they want to point to criticize the way government runs, that's one of the ones they'll go right after, versus a pay plan that makes sense and goes follow through. It's one of the things about the federal government and their pay plan. It's pretty decent. It works. So that's why we're here on that. Any further discussion? Whose motion is it?
This one's me. I'd move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2023-14.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Next item, fiscal policies.
What is Randy doing here?
Hanging out. Wait on this thing.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm here tonight to go over and talk to you about fiscal policies and the new resolution R 2023-32 relating to the FY24 fiscal policies. I think you had in your packet the red line version?
Yes.
Okay, good. What makes it easier? So basically, each year, the fiscal policy kicks off our cycle for the budget process. So here we are starting the new budget season. So updating fiscal policies is the first step. So we have some guidelines to follow in order to move forward as we prepare CIP and the FY25 budget for the city. So basically, this document that you have tonight sets the boundaries and the guidelines for both CIP and the operating budget. So in this year, there are 4 modifications to fiscal policy. The first one is on page 1, and it's right above the now therefore be it resolved clause. We ran into a little situation this year with signing of documents while the city manager was out of the office. And we had the acting city manager sign the documents. Well, bond counsel requested a copy of the authority that gave the acting city manager the authority to sign these documents. And I met with the city clerk and the city attorney, and we had no formal authorization for this. So what these new sections do in fiscal policy is they create the authority to appoint a designee and the authority to designate anybody filling in for the city manager all of the duties of the city manager, and temporarily. So that's what this section does. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't love this. I understand why it's needed. I think with the current staff and the stuff we have in place, I think it's fine for the current group that's here. But the idea of an appointed person being able to appoint a designee for themselves is makes me a little uncomfortable. And then giving them the full rights to sign whatever they want to makes me a little nervous. I get the intent.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't move forward with hitting the deadline for the bonds, getting the bond documents signed. Yeah. So there was a valid reason, and actually, in here it is that the city manager will inform the council in writing of the temporary appointee. So.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with it. I get the intent, but yeah.
So currently what happens is when I'm on vacation or out of state, out of the region, someone fills in for me. And typically it's not a problem because a lot of the things that need to be signed are internal documents. A personal action form, advertising of a position. And I actually prefer that. I don't really like to have someone else sign documents where, we're obligating the city like a bond. Now, the bond documents, when they came in, I knew I'd already been part of the process, I already reviewed it. We just didn't have everything, so I was fine with Rebecca signing it. But when they came back, I just re-signed it. And one of the things that I talked about with the 3 assistant city managers is that, typically I prefer not to have those types of documents executed in my absence, and that they can in fact wait until I return. It's going to be a very rare occasion when they cannot wait. And when that happens, they still contact me. No, so we have a process in place where if something comes up, they call me and ask, is this okay? Is this ready to go? Have you looked at this before they execute it? So I too, I get a little nervous about leaving a blanket statement, but because you typically have to do any of the more formal documents while I'm out, those can typically wait. It hasn't become an issue. We just had this one issue crop up.
And the bond is exactly a thing I would not want to delegate like this, right? And that's where I'm not in favor of that change. I get the intent, but I think we need to come up with something else that's a process to be able to, in an emergency, delegate authority, not put it into our fiscal policy as a standing okay. I don't know. It's just one opinion.
So I'm the exact opposite. If you're the next in line, you got the rank, you got the authority. But you also been trained on what you're going to be able to do, which I know is done all the time. You make it quite clear what you want taken care of and what needs to be done, what you've left for them to take care of, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's not like many things are going to show up as a surprise that needs, this particular item, a lot of time was spent on it. And now all of a sudden the paperwork shows up. Can understand that. So I don't have a big problem with this. I think that's standard fare. And next in line gets to get all the credit or the trouble.
Right.
So that's easy enough. However, I do have a problem with some of the language here because it just seems to me to be a little bit in conflict. So you two may correct me on this, but the first change with the city manager is, the way it's written is hereby granted the authority to appoint a designee. That's already in the code.
Correct.
So I think the fix to that is you just scratch hereby and it becomes a statement of what the fact is. So does that require an amendment or just a scrivener? See what I'm saying?
I do. Yep.
And then I've got another one in the third one, if you wanted to. The second whereas,
Yeah,
or anything you think we need to talk about there?
Do they already do that? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. And then the third whereas, the acting city manager filling the position designated in the city code, not budget, as city manager.
Good catch.
That's before I fell asleep watching. Okay,
okay.
next
All
one?
right. Next one, okay.
Sorry. Just for, thank you, Mr. Chair. For practice, you asked the question of does that need to be amendment? Those both seem like scriveners, but for right now, if we want to make changes to this, would it be amendments to this? Because it's already been gone through first reading? Okay.
Didn't go through first reading.
Yeah, went to council
Yeah.
first.
Went to council first, so it came here. So, okay, I just want to make sure I understood where we were as far as if it was a draft or, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the next change is on page 2, and we've added section G. And it is the policy and the practice of the city to fund payments for vested employees for their vested leave time upon separation of employment. And we have over the past funded similar to a project, money to put aside. So it's kind of like saving money for, a capital reserve. We put a little money away each year. So when we, buy out people, not buy out, but we pay out their vested leave time, we've got money set aside for this, and we refer to them as compensated absences. So what this section does is it just formalizes the process that we have in place at the request of the auditors to have something in writing that kind of codifies what we do. So that's what this section's for.
I have a question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a cap in our practice? Can we codify the cap as well?
It already is in our
in the
handbook.
code.
It's in the
Yeah.
code, okay. All right, then I'm,
Yeah. And we have to, on the liability and the balance sheet side, every year we adjust for these compensated absences. So they are accounted for during audit each year.
and that's fair. The way I read this is it's an amount equal to the amount earned and unused leave. It doesn't reference to the cap that exists in code. So that's where I just,
Okay.
That, and that,
if it's already coded, then it yeah, should be good. Thank you.
that may change from time to time when the council decides. So we'd have to keep watching these languages if we made all those changes.
Right, and I think that's why I referenced it as, let's see, all vested earned leave is accrued when incurred and paid to the employee upon separation of employment as specified in the city's then current employee handbook. So as we make adjustments, this kind of flows with the adjustments to the handbook.
Have any questions on it? So, I've got a question as to, are we reserving the total amount that we would need?
We are trying to get up to that. We're almost there, but we are trying to, so that way, if we have a huge turnover of
Yeah.
staff, we've got enough money. And it is all part of the audit and the OPEB and things of that nature, but yeah, so if we had, 50% of the staff leave, we're not gonna drain the budget on that. We're in good shape.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, letter H is not part of the changes. However, again, it's a little picky thing, but a periodic budget status report for each fund will be provided to the city council. Would it not be more appropriate to say a periodic financial status report, be sort of all-inclusive, which is basically what you do every month anyways? But it's not just the budget, it gives us the whole financial picture.
It gives you, the revenues and expenditures. So it gives you your budget availability. You start talking financial statements, and you're also talking the balance sheet. So,
Okay,
but we
that's-
can refer to it, I mean, it's budget status and availability report.
I'm not sure now. I get what you're saying now that you say that in that fashion. But I also, at the same time, don't want to create a separate report having to be made, the extra work of making a special report. So that's why I think that monthly report we get, that's got everything in it, is sufficient, but.
Yeah, your
here's-
council
here's-
report.
He's the money guy.
Thank you. You're making me think of, I don't think I've ever looked at the full balance sheet outside of in the budgeting process.
Yeah, the full the only time we really have the full financials during the audit process.
Yeah, during the audit budget, yeah.
Numbers person, that's all.
Yeah,
So, okay, the third update can be found on page 5, part 2, letter B. Under C, capital funds. Remember last year, because of the transition to the new system, we actually broke out operating budget and a fund for operations for water sewer, and we created the capital projects fund individually for water sewer. It wasn't until the auditors were here that they strongly recommended that we need to do the same thing for the equipment fund. So what this does is it actually codifies us and gives us the authority of having an equipment project, capital project fund, so. That's all. That is kind of more of a housekeeping. And I think too, as we settle down into the new software too, we're probably gonna have some more little housekeeping things as it reflects and, refers back to the new software. But this was one that they said we should do. Okay, now I'm down to my last one. So, on page 10, this is under the stabilization funds. So section 1 and 3 have been updated to reflect the current recommended unassigned fund balance range. The New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration recommends a range of 5 to 17%. Our old numbers were rather low. They were between 7 and 10%. So what this does is this makes this more in line to what the state of New Hampshire recommends. GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, recommends 5 to 15. GFO, New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration, is a little higher because of the fact that the state of New Hampshire heavily relies on property taxes to raise money for citizens and everything else. We don't have an income tax, we don't have a sales tax. So because we rely heavily on property taxes, those taxes fund the operations for cities, towns, schools, districts based on, funding from the state and local, as well as the county. So it's the option of the schools and the county to demand all their money up front, which we're still in the process of collecting their tax money. So what this does, having a little higher range, gives us more financial flexibility and cash flow, so we can actually accommodate that, so we don't have to go for any, tax anticipation notices or notes or anything of that nature. So that's why we've moved it up, and that's why DRA is higher than, the GFOA. So.
Mr. Chair, what's the cash impact of this change for the city? Is there actually
isn't any.
nothing? I didn't-
No, it's just driving for a goal.
Yeah.
If we're low, it's just, let's try to be really conservative and see if we can start saving a little bit money.
It allows us to maintain more in there if we
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah, and then if we're high, it gives us the opportunity to cash fund projects. So there's a really good balance. And then if you don't know if we have another COVID situation or another economic downturn, you're in a great financial position to continue operations.
Mhm.
So. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from other counselors? Okay. Looking for a motion?
Yeah, I would just say that both my fellow counselors made good points. My feeling is that the second in charge is in direct communication with the manager and will fulfill her expectations, and so I feel comfortable with that change. So the motion, move to recommend the adoption of Resolution R-2023-32.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
I would normally move to amend to adjust that piece out, but knowing that it's only 3 of us here, and I know how it's gonna go, so I'm not gonna waste everybody's time doing that, but just, I don't like that part, and I would try to strike it if it was to come up. I may bring that up in full council, but it's, yeah, other than that, I'm good overall.
Okay. Okay. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Well set. Thank you. That's the end of our list for tonight.
Oh, we're done, right?
Yeah, we're done.